Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal, as always, is to share with you the insights, the skills, the processes, and the leaders that are influencing the retail automotive landscape today. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funsch, and joined by Danny Vendrell. How you doing, Danny?
Doing great, Nick. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Super excited about our guest today, and I'm going to be very intentional about my pronunciation here. Denise Galiatsatos. Welcome, Denise.
Thanks.
I did here. Good.
Oh my gosh, you killed it. You might as well be in the family.
Oh, let's look at that. Awesome. So, Denise, we're glad to have you. Just to level set real quick for our listeners, Denise is a proud leader and the president of PCG Digital, a full-service digital marketing agency that specializes in automotive digital advertising. She is passionate about helping dealerships discover their brand voice and strategizing with the internal PCG team on how to bring those brand messages to shoppers. By developing and producing the automotive social media sales funnel, she has helped dealerships all across the country maximize their ad spend on Facebook and Instagram to deliver a great ROI. In 2018, she successfully orchestrated the PCG Digital rebrand. She's a professional public speaker. I might need some tips. And educator, and became an international speaker when she educated attendees at the World Shopper Conference in Portugal. Her speaking career has grown outside of the automotive community. She was a keynote at the 2018 Association of Directory Publishers Convention. Her book, Can You See Me Now?, takes readers on a journey to fully understand and utilize the digital landscape. However, her greatest accomplishment thus far has been becoming a mother in 2020. Denise lives in the Jersey Shore with her husband, George, and her baby daughter, Summer. Welcome, Denise. Let's take a walk around all things PCG. So cool. I guess to start, PCG, tell us about what that is and kind of your niche in the marketplace from your own perspective and how you go about doing that.
Yeah, sure. So PCG companies within it is made up of a couple of different businesses. So if you're familiar with Brian and Glenn Pash, Brian is the founder and Glenn, his brother, is the CEO and one of the owners as well. So within the company of PCG companies, there's Brian Pash Enterprises, which is our events, our research, our online education, and PCG consulting. Then on the other side is PCG Digital, which is our full service digital marketing agency, which I run. I have 40 employees. Digital marketers that are extremely talented. We took the company remote this year, as most people did, but we're staying remote, which has been fantastic because I've been able to hire just phenomenal folks, in Michigan and Ohio and Florida and Denver. And we're just, that's really who we are now as a company. We service dealerships on the tier 3 level for their SEO, SEM, and social advertising marketing. What makes us unique as a company in that space of digital marketing is that when you sign on with us as a company for full digital, you get a team of 5. Which is crazy, right? Yeah, that's a lot of people on your team. And they're all with the dealership through the ins and outs of the marketing. For them, a lot of collaboration with the client. We always tell dealers when they sign on with us, do you like to collaborate and do you like to speak to your vendor?
Yeah, you interview the dealer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. It's, the more progressive, the better for us. Like, let's go, let's get in it. So that's kind of who we are as an agency. And I, oversee the whole process. My favorite days are when I can still get on client calls and kind of jump into the strategy from that aspect. I love that.
So awesome. The digital space is a differentiator for dealerships. I would imagine, and I don't know this to be factual true, that I'm probably on the up curve and understanding that space. And I think it can be anxiety inducing. It can be like there's this dark kind of web. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you go about kind of clearing some of that clutter and turning the lights on for a dealer that may be anxious or may not just understand kind of those waters? Well, like, where do you kind of begin with somebody like myself who just it's a nuanced kind of channel and how do you go about educating me?
Ooh, that's a great question. So when a client signs on with us, right, during the sales or the interview process of us working together, what we're doing a lot of times is understanding where our main point of contact at the dealership is in regards to that level of understanding, digital, right? And, once we kind of prep that, then I prep the team as to, how involved they are, what they know, and all of that. If we come across, dealerships, which obviously we do, where we know we need to spend more, we know we need to be more involved, we don't understand this, or we had a marketing manager who was handling it then left, then there's a couple of ways we go about it. So number one, I think the first thing that the team is great at, and I make sure of it as well, as we offer up free resources. So here's how we're training our team: Facebook blueprint, GA certification, all of that. We make sure that the client has links to everything and anything that can help them along their way in that aspect. What we've also done at PCG is we've created our own online learning center that we will put our clients into as well, so that they can educate themselves this way. But the thing is, and the number one piece of advice is to not read one thing and then be like, okay, that's it, I'm done, I know it all, because this
Yeah.
changes every day, right? I have to read every day. I have to see what's going on every day. I just was talking to one of my paid search specialists who's been in paid search for a long time, and we were talking about how much things have changed, and if you're not staying up to date with everything that's going on and reading, you're going to get left behind. The biggest thing for auto dealerships too is I tell them to go outside of the industry on what it is
Yeah.
that they're reading. Go look at what some other companies are doing, dive into what e-commerce industries are currently using as far as call to actions go, or what they're tracking on their websites. So it's a lot of education in that aspect to, do research. And I think that a lot of times, a lot of people just need to find, that time in their day in order to be able to do that. That should be part of all of our jobs as marketers, right? What do we use as part of our day for our educational aspect?
Yeah, it's interesting. And Danny, I'd love to get your thoughts here, but I would just point out it's probably good advice whether we're talking about SEO or anything, is like, go get an education about everything and read some. Just because you read one article about any topic doesn't make you an expert. But
Right.
Danny, what are some of your thoughts there?
No, I think that's a great point. And even when you had said, Denise, look outside the industry, look at what other successful companies are doing when it comes to branding and online marketing and how they position themselves to consumers. At the end of the day, from a marketing perspective, people have very similar drivers or motivators, whether they're buying a car, whether they're buying a cup of coffee. There's things that you can look at outside the industry and get some inspiration from. And see and try it out. And that's one of the cool things about marketing is you could always try something out and see what happens. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you learn from it.
Hmm.
Denise, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was we kind of talked at the top of the pod about brand voice and how that's
Mm.
something that you guys work with dealers to help them establish. Thinking back over the last 18 months or so and how kind of accelerated the move to digital has become. I'm assuming a lot of the conversations that y'all have with dealers really dial in on that brand voice and differentiation. And so I'm curious to pick your brain about like what conversations are you having? What are the issues or challenges that are coming up? What advice would you give dealers around that topic?
Ooh, sure. So where it starts is at the consumer level, right? Because the customer always comes first. So
Mhm.
I always ask dealerships, what does your consumers mean to you? Why do you want to do business with somebody? Why should somebody do business with you? And that starts the brainstorming process, right? About, their culture in the dealership and what, their team means to them. And all of that needs to be extended and put out into the marketing messages as well, right? Because purchases it's a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And just like you said, Danny, a lot of times it's okay, if I need, toilet paper, I'm just going to buy toilet paper. It's not a big deal, or paper towels. You may have brands that you're loyal to, but when it comes to a vehicle, when it comes to some big purchase items, it has to be a feeling, right? And why do I have this brand loyalty to this specific place where I want to purchase from? I think what consumers want is to feel comfortable. you know they want to know that they're being taken care of, and they want to know that they're buying for a company that, believes in what they stand for to an extent. And the reason why I've been bringing this up lately with the dealers is, all generations are completely different, right? You
Mhm.
have generations that are going for the price. You have generations that are loyal to a brand. Well, this Generation Z that's coming up, they want to purchase with companies that believe in what they believe in
Yeah.
to an extent. And it's quite funny, if you held a pair of, Nikes in front of somebody that's Gen Z or a pair of Tom's shoes, they usually go for the Tom's shoes because when you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, they give another one back.
Yeah.
So it's all stuff like that that we need to start thinking about. But the number one thing, like I said, is the consumer. What do your consumers mean to you? And that usually flows then very organically through the marketing messages.
So how do you so you're having that conversation with the dealer. How do you help to calibrate the price, the hook kind of initially?
Mhm.
So how do you balance that kind of price driven message or lead and kind of that mission driven or kind of culture driven message?
It's serving the right message at the right time. So you have to cultivate your consumers on digital, right? And first create that intent to shop. And then when people get lower in the funnel, then you serve them the price. But it's all about them understanding where people are. I think a lot of times in the digital realm, marketers will throw out a campaign with one specific message to everybody in the funnel. Well, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean everything to everybody, so you have to be extremely strategic about the audiences that you're serving your campaigns to and when that price comes in, right? So we always have our dealers, when we start, we say, okay, we're going to start really top of the funnel. We're going to do a lot of branding. Um, we're going to have inventory run alongside of it. And then we just on the back end keep switching out the audiences and rotating them in that way, whether we're creating the audiences through AdWords or Facebook and Instagram. And that's kind of, how we go about with that price driven. I also always tell this story. Even when I present. So years ago, I was working with a dealership and they had done a really great video for the Ford Escape. And
Okay.
it was a yoga centered video and it was Escape with the Escape. And the person who did it was hilarious. And it was it was such a well done video. So what we did on the Facebook level was we created a campaign with two audiences, and we did one for in-market shoppers because we could do that at the time. This was
Mhm.
before the Cambridge Analytica scandal and everything.
Yeah.
So we did one audience for that, and we did the other audience as people that were interested in the outdoors, people that were interested in yoga, people that were interested in, meditation, all of that. The audience that converted the best on the campaign was the interest based because we
Really?
created an intent to shop and we got into their news feeds and they saw that video and it resonated with them, and ever since then my marketing ideas and tactics have completely changed.
Wow. I mean, I think it's a great story and a testament to kind of building that kind of story around what will resonate with the consumer and kind of drive that intentionality around putting them into the
Hmm.
um, shopping phase. Uh, yeah, that's a fascinating story. Danny, when you think of kind of SEO, what are some of your thoughts as you think about kind of creating a story for a dealership?
Well, yeah, I think to that end, like showing the car in the person's life, what does that look like? And ultimately, a lot of and we've talked about this on past podcasts too about brand. And when you go for cost leadership or you go for largest inventory, those are numbers based positioning strategies that someone else could come along and say, I've got the best cost, I've got the best inventory,
Hmm.
those kinds of things. So you talk about the experience. We learned just a couple weeks ago from Tyson Jominy from JD Power, millennials are the largest buying audience, overtaking the other generations for vehicles. And so you
Hmm.
look at that, you look at Gen Z up and coming, and the experience being the number one aspect there. So what does it feel like to buy a car from your dealership? But then also, what will it feel like to own that car after? And I think you could capture those things both creatively through video and the graphics that you create, but also just the stories that you tell on your listing pages, on your website homepage, and Google's going to pick all that stuff up at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's important stuff. Denise, I'm interested. You spoke earlier, kind of speaking with some of your colleagues around how much the industry has changed to where we are today,
Hmm.
which is kind of a rearview mirror look. If you got to kind of take a windshield look at the space, the retail automotive, kind of what are you educating or how are you kind of setting some of that vision and mission for the future with some of your customers?
Yeah, sure. So, again, like I mentioned, Cambridge Analytica, right? Like we used to be able to, target in market shoppers based off of their behaviors and what it was vehicle wise that they were looking for. Well, when that went away, we had to pivot and shift our marketing strategies. We're coming into an age again where we're doing the same thing with third party cookies disappearing. But what I always tell dealers and what I did educate them on in Napa is this isn't really that big of a deal. If you know your audience, if you know the message you need to serve to them, if you're working with a great agency that has you set up for iOS 14, that knows how to create proper audiences, you're going to be just fine. As long as you're staying true to your messaging, the consumers are definitely, going to come and be there. We've seen the marketing messages change drastically the past year, right? So we went from being, all hunky dory and cool to the world shut down.
Yeah.
And then it was dealerships are deemed essential, open them back up. But what did that look like at that time for a consumer to come buy a car from you? We saw ourselves as an agency shifting the marketing messages to it's hands off. We're sterilizing everything. You don't have to test drive the car if you don't want to. You just always have to be adapting. Now we're in a position where, there's an inventory shortage. So what does that mean? Are we showcasing the vehicles? Yes, but now it's a lot of top of funnel branding. You should come by with us. It's a lot of top funnel service, re-engaging those customers to come back. You just have to keep up with the market trends, and you always have to be adjusting your messages and your techniques to that, to what is going on in the world for sure.
It's interesting. I was just reflecting when you said that the the natural kind of inventory shortage is forcing. I shouldn't say forcing, is challenging dealers to think more about their story and connecting, I think, with consumers that way. And
Mhm.
if we create and if we're trying to get dealers to do that anyway, the industry itself is kind of forcing dealers to do it anyway. So it's really going to be interesting to see how kind of focusing, being more intentional about that top of the funnel story is going to cascade into the future around kind of the shoppers. I hadn't thought really about it that way, but just intriguing to me.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're talking from like a advertising standpoint, I have no problem saying that the best bang for your buck right now, as far as branding goes, is going to be the Facebook and Instagram advertising.
Yeah.
I'll
Best
say it.
bang. I'll
Best
say it,
bang
she
for your
said.
buck. I'm saying it because
I'm
the thing
saying.
is that people are scrolling through their news feeds all day. They're looking
Right.
for a reason to want to shop with somebody. Getting in that news feed, creating that story, taking your consumers on that ride through who it is, through who you are, through social advertising is just the best bang for your buck for advertising right now.
Wow. There, you heard it here first, right?
I
There
said
we
it.
go.
I said it, Denise said. So I'm curious. Talk to me about Can You See Me Now, your book. What was your kind of intent behind that? That's a big accomplishment, writing a book,
Yeah.
being published, all that good stuff, and kind of what you've learned going through that process.
Yeah. When you were reading my bio, I was like, I should every once in a while just sit and read my bio. I was like, that sounds pretty good, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that makes
You
you feel that's
forget,
impressive.
right?
Yeah.
As the years go on. So, yeah. So, Can You See Me Now was a great opportunity that was presented to me and a colleague of mine, Don, at the time, by Brian Pash. Don and I were really developing our speaking careers. I was growing in the industry in that way. So, Brian had said, why don't you two co write a book? And our goal for the book was that we wanted it to be educational, but also tell a story that was do not be afraid of marketing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times, a lot of people, it, there can be a fear to jumping into marketing and to spending the money and understanding what's what. And that's what the angle of the book was, here it all is. This is how we're utilizing it. Here's some ways that we've seen a lot of success. And then we shared some great stories at the end about some of our experiences with, colleagues and peers of ours buying cars at the time. One of the stories at the end was I used to have friends. I don't know how familiar you are with New Jersey, the East Coast, Connecticut, all of that, but they lived in Hoboken at the time,
Okay.
which borders, it's right across the river from Manhattan. And they went all the way to Connecticut to buy a car and they took the train up there because they liked the vibe of the dealership. It had the car that they were looking for. And to hop on a train and pay a little amount of money to go up there, they bought the car and drove it home. And that's how they shopped. And I shared that story in the book as such a unique thing to say, don't always limit yourself with your marketing, because there could be people out there that you have exactly what they're looking for. So we were able to tell some really great stories in the book too, um, which was fun. Did I think I would look like Carrie Bradshaw sitting at my desk typing away each day? Yeah, I did, but that's not what happened. It was a labor of love. There were days where I was like, oh my Lord, I don't know how much longer I could
Yeah.
do this. If I do ever write another book, I think I would do a lot of voice text to start and just keep pumping out ideas instead of just sitting there typing away. But, if there's anybody out there that is thinking I should write a book, just dive in and do it, honestly.
Let's start with voice to text, right?
Start with
Yeah.
voice to text. Yeah. Label out your chapters first, because then at least you have a path, and do voice to text. That would be my biggest recommendation.
Awesome. That's cool. Danny, it's not lost on me. That's the second story we've heard recently about, I think we had another guest on the podcast who flew halfway across the country to buy a car because it was the experience they want. And framing it like, hey, it's an adventure a little bit, like whether it's taking the train to Connecticut to drive it back, or
Yeah.
jumping on a plane with your wife and flying to Orlando and picking up a car. The experience is important. It's not necessarily price is not the only differentiator.
Right.
Yeah, amazing stuff. So, Denise, I'm curious. We are recording this in the middle of the Olympics, and by the time the Olympics may be buttoned up, but Summer Olympics, what's your favorite Olympic sport? What are you most intrigued about?
I love the swimming and the surfing.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
have been watching a lot of swimming. Actually, the 17-year-old girl from Alaska won the gold
Yeah.
earlier this morning, which is super exciting. Love the surfing as well. I'm a big fan of the Olympics, actually. So like I always watch. I think it's great. I like the camaraderie. Seeing all the countries and everything. But surfing and swimming, those are my go-tos.
Surfing new to the Olympics, and I think the
Yeah.
U.S. won the first female gold
Yep.
in surfing.
Yeah.
The other, I think, cool thing, I was thinking about this morning. I saw the 17-year-old win gold. What a cool video of kind of her community, small community in Alaska, where I think the nearest regulation pool is 2 hours away.
Yeah.
Cheering for her, it was so exciting and so. I don't know. It was just interesting to kind of watch and gave me all the feels, certainly watching that for her family and her community. So cool times. For
Yeah,
sure.
that was great. It really was, just what a fantastic moment for sure.
Yeah. So Danny, I'm curious, what's your kind of biggest takeaway from today's conversation with Denise?
What does your customer mean to you? That's the note that I took, Denise, as you were walking through, your advice, your perspective for dealers. I think you kind of start with your why a little bit, and why you're there, and how you serve your community, and the customers that walk through your dealership and visit your website. What do they mean to you? And let that kind of drive your strategic decisions about branding and marketing. Nick, what about you?
I think great minds think alike, because I was kind of honed in on the same thing. It occurred to me that, when you answer that question, you're not going to answer it with I want our customers to think of us as the cheapest in the marketplace. Because I think you're devaluing the brand you're representing, you're devaluing your business. And I think reflecting helps to kind of change your perspective and change your mindset about your own personal business. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway for me. So Denise, this has been great. I appreciate your time. Where can our listeners find you?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This was, definitely great. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just, Denise Galiatsatos, if you could spell it. If you can't reach out to Nick, he can he can help you out. He's a pro.
Yeah, we will put it in the show notes and make sure to link to that. Again, this has been great for our listeners. Be sure to like this episode, share it with your friends, and shoot us a note. Tell us what other topics you're interested in, so we can provide some perspective for you. So for Danny, for Denise, for Drew, thank you for listening, and like and share with your friends.